Welcome. In this video, we're going to go over my favorite game releases of 2020. So we are almost over with year 2020, and it's this one time of the year where I put my face in front of the camera instead of playing a game with just my hands. So it's been quite a year. Unfortunately, gaming's continued. There's been a lot of great games played this year, a couple good releases. I'm going to do something a little bit different here. Instead of making a top 10 list, I'm just going to go over the 28 new release games of 2020, along with some expansions and reprints, and just give you my thoughts on them, whether I liked them, who I'd recommend them for. Before I do that, in case you're new to the channel, just to give you an idea of the type of games that I like, I'm into fantasy type games, so D&D, Pathfinder type board games. I also like sci-fi, Star Wars, Star Trek, and of course comic book, DC, Marvel type characters. As far as game mechanics, deck building is one of my favorite mechanics. I also like just dungeon crawling and dice rolling in general. Nothing against heavy Euro type games. They do not get played a lot by myself or within my group. And one last thing, I've never made a top 10 list kind of thing. Basically, I know what my top 2 games are of all time, and we'll see both of those in this list. My number 3, depending on the day of the week and the group I'm playing with, could change between 20 or 30 different games. So with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into the list for 2020. So since I don't own all the games we're going to be going over today, or that I've played over 2020, I'll be using Board Game Geek just to go over those so we can at least get a look at the different games. And I'll start alphabetically, but since my first one starts with a number, I guess we'll get to A's here in just a bit. So the first game is 5 Minute Mystery, which they show as a real-time co-op mystery game for 1 to 4 players. Can't imagine playing this game with just one player. For some reason, I thought it went more than 4. But nope, yep, 1 to 4 players. All right, so this is one of the real-time games. So you're going to have a clock going, and you're trying to find a suspect out of a bunch of cards, and cooperatively you're trying to work with your teammates. One's going to be in charge of the codex, the other is going to be looking at these cards placed in front of us. See if I can find a picture, or a better picture of the game in play. There we go. So hand one person the codex. One of these cards, kind of like Mysterium, is going to go in the middle of the table. Everyone else is going to try to relay different types of symbols to them. The person in charge of the codex is going to move this, and then once you think you've got it, you'll flip the card over and it'll tell you if you've got the codex correct or not. If you do, you'll get a clue that's going to help you figure out something about the culprit. So it might tell you what type of skin they have, if they've got a patch, a monocle, full glasses, carrying a hat. And like I said, you've got 5 minutes to try to figure this out. So I'd recommend this for people. It's a good family game or just a quick filler. Like I said, it's typically not the type of game I go into. I tend to just watch people go through these real-time games, but this was fun to play and actually enjoyed it. Next, getting into the alphabet with our A's, we got Aeons End. So this is a campaign version of the game. So play a campaign against monstrosities from beyond the breach. Aeons End is a game that's been out for several years now. It's a deck builder with a couple different mechanics. So there's just everything in the game laid out. See if we can find something in gameplay. Alright, there we go. So some of the difference to your normal deck builder with this one is you have a random turn order, so you never know if you're going first, last, when the villain's going to activate. And then also for yourself, you never shuffle your deck. So as you go through it, you're just going to flip it over and put it back in redraw. It's kind of a magic themed game going up against a whole bunch of different type of nemesis. And its deck kind of plays itself. Highly recommend this. This is in my top games of all time. I just don't know where I'd put it. But definitely a game I have a lot of fun playing with. I think it's sitting back here with a whole bunch of boxes that I finally consolidated. I'm down to, what, 4 boxes with everything in it. But I pretty much have everything for this game. So I highly recommend that one. Next, still in the A's, is Alter Quest. So this game just came out recently. Haven't got many plays in with it. Actually, just the one. Played it solo. I want to get it to the table with a few more players in with it, so it's for 1 to 4. It is a dungeon crawl type of game. It's got great components, awesome miniatures. They do not come painted like that one though. Some people have done some great jobs with that. So it's got their famous modular deck system. So, I mean, of course, you can pick your different type of hero. You can switch up the quest with a different villain. So it'll play differently depending on how you mix those decks up. So if you're looking for a different fantasy-themed dungeon crawler, this might be it. And by different themed, I mean instead of your typical goblins and orcs, they've got some frog-looking people and then hog-looking people. The miniatures, like I said, are awesome in this game. So even if you don't like the game and you need some more minis for your role-playing, another game that you might want to pick up on. Next, Aquatica. So this is a game that I think was kick-started. I think one of my friends picked this up at Gen Con Online, so he got a little bit early. It is for 1 to 4 players, so it's right up my alley. It's an engine builder type game. It's a recruit heroes and fight monsters in a race to conquer the sea. So it is victory points, engine building. It's got some great art and really good components. You can see some of the manas in here. So you've got some people that can help you on your quests, locations you're trying to fight and get with, and what's really neat about these locations, they are going to, if I can find the right picture, slide up into your player board and give you different abilities as you move them on up. And of course you do want to move them up so you can get victory points at the end. The base game, we played it just once. Once we figured out what was going on, the game went rather quickly with the normal goals that come on the board, but there are different goals you can put on this. So I'll be getting the game here and just see how much further I can take it and how it goes solo. And I think it just released recently for regular retail anyway. So then we have Arkham Horror, the board game, got an expansion. So Arkham Horror, the board game and the card game are both games that I rate about the same. I think they're must-haves in your collection. I think I've got, yeah, Arkham Horror, got a shelf here. The card game, and I think the board game's sitting on my back shelf over there. So highly recommend both of these. This expansion I just recently purchased. It's great. It just adds more components. 8 more investigators. It adds a terror mechanic and some big bad creatures. Stella, who's also in a new card game. And these Tyrants of Ruin is the one game I played against, and believe me when I say it did not go well against these guys. We had hope for about the first 2 turns, and after then it all went downhill. But Arkham Horror, the board game, highly recommend it. And the same thing with Arkham Horror, the card game. So this year they released a bunch of investigator packs that sold out quickly. I did not get any of those purchased. Fortunately, right now I'm just playing other people's version of the game. They did get some of these sets. So the first person I played was Winifred, and she played with my theme. I love playing with her. And right now I think I'm playing Stella in our other game, and she's built off of losing your skill checks, which oddly enough is weird to plan out, but easy to accomplish when it doesn't help you. So when these get reprinted, I probably will pick those up. So if you're into Arkham Horror, the card game, I do recommend picking up a couple of these packs. Next on the list is Batman Who Laughs Rising. So this is a dice rolling themed game. Cooperatively for 1 to 4 players. Of course, they threw the 1 to 4 on there. If you're playing solo, you're just playing 2 characters, which is alright for a game this simple. It does come with this awesome miniature right here. There were different versions of this game, I think sitting up on my shelf back here. You've got Batman, Thanos Rising, and the Star Wars Dark Side. So there's different versions of this game. They all work very similar. You're rolling dice, trying to recruit heroes to get a good engine built, and then take down the main villain. So if you like dice rolling, manipulation kind of games, and you like the Batman theme, I'd recommend this one also. Next, Betrayal at Mystery Mansion. This is kind of a re-skinning of, I think it was what, Mystery on the Hill or something like that. So they just threw in the Scooby-Doo theme. And along with that, somewhere in here, hopefully they show some Scooby snacks, so it's a different mechanic to try to help you in rolling dice. So it works very close to the original version. Personally, I like the original better. This just didn't add enough change for me. And while I am a Scooby-Doo fan, I still like the original game. But this is a cooperative game. You're going through trying to figure out or explore enough in a house, and then eventually someone's going to become a traitor. Then becomes a one versus many. A lot of fun. So I'd highly recommend the base game, or if you're a Scooby fan, Betrayal at Mystery Mansion. So next on the list, I've got Colorful. And that box is not very colorful. This is just a small box with a deck of cards in it. And basically what you're doing, I think I saw a better picture of everything laid out here. It's a cooperative game. One person's going to put out these cards up here, say a keyword, and put a color face down. Everyone else is going to try to match that same color. A guy brought this to game night. We played it about 4, maybe 5, 6 times right in a row. And by the end of the night, 3 of us went over and ordered a copy for ourselves. So like I said, yeah, I've got that sitting right here. It's just a small box with a bunch of cards in it. It's a quick and easy family filler type game. Just seeing how people think and associate with different colors. So a quick little game I'd recommend there. Next, not so much a quick little game. D6, Dungeons, Dudes, Dames, Danger, Dice, and Dragons. Game for 1 to 4 players. To me, it is very thematic with Dungeons and Dragons. It's almost just a one-off role-playing session. You start out, you're trying to build up your character. You've got little potions. You're going adventuring through the board. You can play cooperatively or competitively. The components are great on this game. So if you're looking for a D&D type game that's not actually D&D, I do recommend this game. It was a lot of fun to play. Next, we've got the DC deck building game, Dark Knight's Metal. I'm a huge fan of the DC deck building games. I know a lot of people kind of shy away from them, say they don't like the theme or they just don't like DC comics. But I enjoy it. This is probably the game that gets played the most when I'm introducing this type of theme or deck building to other players or just comic books. So I've got a lot of plays in this with my daughter and nieces and nephews. So it's always going across good. I like this version. It adds a way of getting multiple heroes you're playing with, and the mechanic of how you're trying to beat the game playing solo or cooperatively. So it works the same as all the others with you've got power, you're trying to purchase different cards, make your deck better, and get the most victory points. Next, DinoGenics. So this is a reprint, build and manage your own dinosaur island resort. To me, this is probably the better version of Jurassic Park than the other games that aren't Jurassic Park, but are trying to be. So you are competing with other corporations to make your island better with the different types of dinosaurs without things going haywire and your dinosaurs eating all your visitors. Which didn't happen as much as we thought it would happen. If you want that to happen, there are event cards come out. Usually you get to see what's about to happen. So if you want Jurassic Park, keep those as hidden information. So when those events happen, things will go bad and terribly bad for other people if you want a lot more randomness. Like I said, this was a Kickstarter several years ago. I missed out the first version, so I got in on the reprint, and there was an expansion adding more underwater dinosaurs with that. So if you like Jurassic Park and you want that board game type themed, this one will do it for you. Next was Dungeons & Dragons Adventure Begins. Players work together as they journey through the lands of Neverwinter. So this is a cooperative board type game that kind of teaches role-playing and moving miniatures and rolling dice. So I did a solo thing on the channel for this. I've also played it with my playgroup once, and we all agree it's a great game for what it's meant to do, and I think that is to introduce people to board games and role-playing. As far as experienced gamers, I don't think this is something you'd really like to jump in on, but for what it does, I think it was just 25 bucks too. For what it does and the price, it's well worth it if you're trying to bring your kids into gaming or some new people into it. Next, probably one of the first games I got from 2020, Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy. It's a civilization exploration game. Very well themed. Like I said, I got it at the beginning of the year, right before the world shut down, so I got one play in with it. And then it's been sitting up on the shelf ever since. Components in this, top notch. Comes with game trays. It's just a beautiful game to get to the table. So if you like space exploration, building up your own ships with different races, different player powers, this is probably a great game for you to go ahead and pick up on. Next, Evil Dead 2, the board game. So one of my friends brought this, and of course we had to get it to the table because we're all fans of Evil Dead movies. So this is a one versus many type game. Not my best or favorite type of game to play. I just feel like they're usually not that equally powered. Each scenario seems to favor the many or the few, depending on how it's playing. But thematically, you've got all the characters in there. The way they worked in all the different pieces was kind of interesting. So if you're a huge Evil Dead fan, you might want to take a look into this. It will not be making my collection, just as an FYI. Next, we've got Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. So this is a smaller version. If the other game was a bit too massive for you, this is a good jumping in part. And if you enjoyed the first game, you're probably going to really enjoy this. So 1 to 4 players. It is a dungeon crawl type game. See, that picture isn't the one I was hoping to click on. Let me go back a couple spaces here. There we go. So what this one did, instead of giving you a whole bunch of boards to make a modular map, they give you a book that folds open, and you've got the map right there. And there's a second book too, so you can just attach it to the sides to get those connected for a bigger map. So like I said, it's a dungeon explorer, except instead of rolling a lot of dice, it's hand management. It's a puzzly type game. Eventually I'll get the 5 introductory scenarios put up on here. So well produced, well made game. So if you're into dungeon crawls that are a little bit different than the typical, it's probably a game you want to look into. Let me get my browser up to date here. Alright, next on the list is Hero Realms. So I did a top deck building list at one time, and Hero Realms and Star Realms was on that list. The Lost Village campaign deck, so this lets you play solo or cooperatively with another group of players. This is the second campaign. I'd skipped out on the first one, but did pick this one up, so eventually I'll get some playthroughs of this one going on. So it's your typical deck builder. You start with a small, not so efficient deck. You purchase additional cards, add them to your deck, and try to defeat villains. I played it solo. Definitely not my favorite way to play this game. I do need to get this in a group. I do like playing versus mode on this, but I think the campaign play will also do well multiplayer. Next was Infinity Gauntlet, a love letter game. So there's probably 10 to 15 versions of this game out there. Starting with the original love letter. You were trying to sneak your letter into the princess because she was depressed to see who you could win. Then they've come out with a whole lot of different versions, and I've got most of them. There's a Batman version, Lord of the Rings. Let's see, Lovecraft letter. I think there was an Adventure Time. So there's a whole lot of different versions. Basically the process of the game. You're going to have 2 cards. You're going to play one, do its special ability, draw another card, and keep on. You're trying to get either take out your opponents or in with the most points at the end of the turn. It's a real quick, light game. I recommend at least one type of love letter. Infinity Gauntlet, some people have said it's their favorite. To me, it's my least favorite, just the way it works. I would recommend the Batman version if you can get a hold of it, or the Lovecraft letter. To me is probably the best game version of the Love Letter games. Next, Marvel Champions the card game. This is my #1 game of all time at the moment. If you watch my channel at all, there's a lot of this game being played, and they keep coming out with monthly, well, almost monthly new stuff keeps coming out for this game. So it's a deck building game, cooperative. You can play solo, you can play multiplayer. I like playing both ways. Highly recommend this game, especially if you're into the Marvel theme. Then another Marvel game, Marvel United. This is a miniatures game. So if you like painting and this style of mini, it's probably worth just getting for that. But it's more of a, reminds me of Pandemic a little bit. See if I can find a picture of the game out and play. You've got the villain here, a whole bunch of different locations. You can choose one of any heroes. You're trying to go away and prevent certain things from happening while going ahead and achieving some certain goals. So it's more of an introductory type game. It's not too advanced. It plays pretty quickly. I'm more anxious to see what all the expansions are going to do for this game. So we'll see what happens with that game when that starts shipping. Next, more Marvel, in case you couldn't tell. Marvel Villainous. So this is a re-theming of the Villainous game, which was where you played all the Disney movie bad guys. So now it's got a Marvel theme. I was not a huge fan of the original game, but they threw Marvel on it, so I thought I'd give it a try. And yeah, it still fell short for me. This is a game that'll be leaving my collection pretty soon. But if you like the original Villainous, I mean, it's a competitive game. You all have different special goals you're trying to get through, special powers, and you're playing the bad guys trying to fight the good guys, basically. The original game and this one didn't sit well for me. And so even though it's a Marvel game, it won't be staying in my collection. If you like the original, I'd highly recommend this if you like Marvel, but just did not work for myself. Next, Reichbusters, Project Vril. This, to me, well, first, let's go over it. It's a dungeon crawl, 1 to 4 players. And the 1 to 4, just be aware that it's best with 4 characters in the game. So if you're playing solo, you'll probably be running 4 characters at the same time, which wasn't difficult. That's the way I did my plays. The rule book in this game that came originally with it, first read, I thought it was a great rule book. Then I started playing and just had a ton of questions. So had to home rule some things. The company was quick about coming out with an FAQ. And even before the FAQ came through, I played this game a ton. I loved it, even with the rules problems. It was a lot of fun. Basically, you're going in, it's got a sneak mechanic. So you're trying to be quiet in the first half of the game, then the alarm's going to go off, and things go a lot worse. So you're trying to go in, kill the enemies quickly, get to a certain point, get an objective, and get out before things get too crazy. It was a lot of fun. It's a dice rolling game. I had a lot of fun with it and even painted some minis, so I'd recommend it. Just be aware the rules are going to be iffy, so check their website to get the FAQ. Next is another dungeon crawl, Shadows of Brimstone. It says it released in 2014. So the base game has been around for then. They've done a reprint or re-editing of the game to kind of balance some of the original characters in the game. This is my #2 game of all time for 1 to 4 players. I've never played it solo yet, but that's still on my to-do list. And I figure with the revised edition, that's a good time to do it. There is one downside. All these minis come on spurs, so you do have to cut them, glue them together. This was the first game I ever did that with, and I'm glad I did. I really love this game. The only negative thing is now I own everything for it, so when we do go to play it, it's an effort, a team effort, but a lot of fun. It's almost a role-playing game. You get your characters, you've got your stats, and you'll earn experience, and you can level up, get more gear. So I think that's another reason why I like this game, is the way it levels up. So it's an old Western theme. going up against Cthulhu type monsters. You're dealing with corruption, you can get mutations, you can get tentacle arms, mustaches, things like that. Sometimes they help you, sometimes they hinder you. A lot of fun to play. Highly recommend this if you like dungeon crawls and those themes. Next, we've got Shaolia, Warring States, a fast-paced dueling game of kingdom building filled with deadly strategy and tactics. So 2 to 4 players. This is an engine builder that I enjoyed. So basically you've got random cards coming out. You're going to purchase different areas that are going to give you special abilities. 2 ways to win on this one. You can get some victory points. First one to get that will win, or you can damage your opponent enough and that will go down. So I like the gameplay. There was a Kickstarter. There's a solo version or variant coming. So whenever that ships, I'll definitely get that to the channel. But right now, this is just a 2 to 4 player game that's usually not in my normal wheelhouse, but occasionally I find an engine builder that I enjoy. Next, Small World of Warcraft. This was a reprinting. Small World's been out forever. Fantasy, area control type game. 2 to 5 players. This just throws the World of Warcraft theme on top of it, which really didn't take much of an effort. I think it just fit in there fine. So one of the new things in this, instead of having one large map, you definitely have different islands to go through. So area control, getting victory points, different monster powers. A lot of fun. It's one of the few area control type games that I enjoy. Just skills wear well with odd numbered players. I've always found that in area control games, if you're playing 3 players, 2 people fight, 1 guy sits to the side. And this is an aggressive game. That strategy will not work for you in this type. So Small World of Warcraft. If you've got the base game, you may or may not need this, but if you don't have the original, this is probably a good jumping on point for you. Next, Splendor Marvel. So another game that's got the Marvel theme on it now. I love Splendor. It was an engine builder, very simple, easy to get to the table, easy to explain with new people. This just throws the Marvel theme on it, which means this came in. They didn't really change too much. A few things about scoring that makes you branch out instead of going one direction. But you're going to go through your turn getting these crystals, spend them to recruit heroes, try to get some objectives, get up to 16 points. And the first one to do that is going to trigger the end of the game, and then whoever's got the most points will win. So this will replace my original Splendor, just because of the Marvel theme. The original theme really didn't have much to it. So this was a good theming for me anyway. Next was a Kickstarter Trial by Trolley. Whose life or death do you value more? A game of difficult moral decisions. And that's exactly what this is. Just looking at the cover, what's going on is you're on a train car, the brakes have gone out, and you've got to choose to either go one direction and take out the kid eating ice cream, or the other direction to take out the elderly couple. So during the game, you're going to split into 2 teams. One person's in charge of the train, and you've got to convince that person to go the other direction, so you'll be playing cards on it. Let's see, it's not in a language I understand, but you're just trying to say, hey, there's kids playing, you don't want to go that direction, or hey, there's a bad guy, you do want to go that direction. So you're playing other cards on your side or the other team side to try to direct the train engineer to run over the other team. So pretty neat game. I enjoyed it. Nice filler. Trial by Trolley. Then last on my list, dice rolling game, Zorro the Dice Game. So oddly enough, there are not that many Zorro games out there. I used to watch those movies all the time as a kid on Saturdays. So this is 2 to 6 players. There is a solo variant. I've got a playthrough of that on the channel. You can check that out. I like I said, I like rolling dice. Zorro's a different theme, but it could really be any theme on this. You are getting too old for the job, like I currently am in real life, and you're trying to train your predecessor. So competitive or solo, dice rolling, dice manipulation. I recommend this if you like those things and the Zorro theme. And that's a quick look at all the 2020 releases, reprints, and expansions that I played this year. Hopefully you picked up something good on that list. Maybe get yourself a early or late Christmas gift. And as always, I hope you enjoyed this video, so please click on the like button below and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.